Welcome to the Farmer and the City Girl podcast. My name is Rob Sharkey, and I'm the farmer. I'm from Illinois, and I also host the Shark Farmer podcast.
And my name is Carrie Zilka. I am an IT professional living and working in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm the host of the A Creative Mind Fiction podcast. Our mission is to try and bridge the gap between farmers and consumers through honest and real-life conversations.
And let's be clear, we do not represent all farmers and definitely don't represent all consumers. We're just simply trying to have a discussion and trying to get you guys to discuss as well.
Show notes for this episode can be found at thefarmerandthecitygirl.com.
That's right. And today's a good one. I think so. Of course, they're all good, but today's sustainability.
Yes. In agriculture and some of the trends, because I find this subject rather fascinating.
It does seem to be one that the consumers like hearing, that something's sustainable.
Well, of course.
Yeah. Can I read the definition you found?
Absolutely.
The sustainable agriculture is one that produces abundant food without depleting the earth's resources or polluting its environment. Huh. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Okay.
Why, you don't?
No, I do.
Okay.
But there's a lot of room for interpretation there.
Let's use Wisconsin's wild turkey as an example.
Okay.
We hunted them to death, and then there were no more. And it's taken us 35 years to bring the population back. How about we not do that with food?
Okay. I'm trying to wrap my head around that as far as agriculture because, as you know, where I'm sitting right now, my family has farmed for over 150 years. To me, that's sustainable. So I'm trying to compare that to the turkey thing. I mean, there we had a resource that you just diminished, and I don't see that as farming. Okay. I mean, if you did that as farming, you wouldn't be farming very long.
So, if you planted nothing but corn in every single field, every year, after year, after year, after year, would you always be able to plant corn forever and ever?
Okay, so this is probably where it gets into it, is the fertilizer and the commercial fertilizer, especially they're coming from, the potash mines, your NPK, your nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Those are brought in. Now, let's say 100 years ago, there was farms, like you would have had a lot of farm there in Wisconsin, that kind of what I refer to as the old McDonald farm. Had the farmer and his family, and they raised some crops. They raised some corn, some soybeans, some hay. They had cows and chickens and horses and all that stuff. Let's say 150 years ago. Let's go with the horses. That was what a lot of people will define as sustainable because it all stayed in there. You use the manure from the livestock to fertilize the fields and so on and so on. About in the 50s there somewhere, they really started using these commercial fertilizers and they saw these big jumps. I'm going to argue that it was more the consumer's decision than the farmer's decision because I think it's obvious that a lot of people would rather live in a city and not farm and get their food at various places than to actually produce it themselves.
Agreed.
Really?
Yeah, why not?
I get confused when you agree with me sometimes.
But you're coming at it from a purely farmer standpoint. You got to remember, what is it, like 98% of the world is not a farmer?
I'd argue 99 of the U.S. But yeah, well, I don't want to split hairs. Go ahead.
You're like the king of splitting hairs. So, if a zombie apocalypse happened, if everybody was wiped out and you had to farm your land to feed your family, would you be able to do it?
Yeah.
Without a bunch of chemicals being carted in?
Yeah, but then you get back to what else are you using? And you know, when my grandfather farmed this farm, he was making trip after trip after trip across the farm to deal with the weeds. The way they dealt with weeds was they would use equipment. They tilled it. So they used a row cultivator, and he would go 2 to 4 rows at a time, back and forth, using fuel. And so the argument is, what's better? The 2 trips across with the herbicide, the GMO crop, or those trips after trips after trips where you're doing tillage.
Those facts aside, if the world blew up, everything burnt down, and you had to survive on your farm without any outside resources, would you be able to?
I could, yeah.
Then I believe your farm is sustainable. I think that a non-agricultural, non-farmer standpoint doesn't really equate it to corn and soybeans. It's more to, like my turkey example. A couple years ago for our New Year's Eve, we were having a bunch of people over, and I went to order some shrimp, some Key West shrimp. And I can't remember what exact species it was, but the website on it said, please do not order this type of shrimp from any vendor because they're, I don't know, in danger of being wiped out or whatever. It's not a sustainable resource. They don't reproduce as quickly as whatever other type of shrimp. And that always stuck in my head. So to me, sustainable is without any outside influence, can we harvest or kill and eat this particular whatever it is, and it can reproduce at a rapid rate on its own that I don't have to come in and care for it. That to me is what sustainability is.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I could feed my family. Mm-hmm. I couldn't feed you too. That's the thing. You can argue about the numbers of what a farmer feeds. 127 is thrown out there. Every farmer feeds 127 people. I don't know. That definitely would not happen. So, yeah. I'm not... All I can do is think of The Walking Dead now.
I would be screwed. I would have to go and shoot people and steal their food. That's the truth of the matter.
The truth of the matter, you'd probably be happy doing that.
Channeling my inner Michonne.
That's exactly. You are Michonne right there.
No, okay, all joking aside, when I hear the word sustainable, it means completely different things to me than it does to you, obviously. Because I never think about, if the world burned down, is my lawn going to be sustainable? Will the grass be able to regrow without me helping it? That's not what I think about. I think about species that are being hunted out of, into extinction or whatever, or overfishing or things like that. Coral reefs, which are, I'm not going to go all hippy-dippy on you, but it is because of man that it's being diminished. It is not sustainable without some human intervention. So I do not believe that certain things are sustainable as a food source. And I think most people fall into that category.
I think where a lot of people get us on sustainable is the fact that we bring in fertilizer. And there again, we wouldn't have to, but in our defense, the consumers have also told us that they don't want livestock around. So those have been pushed off to where there aren't so many people. So we don't have the manure to put on the ground that we used to. When my dad used to raise hogs, we would put the manure on the ground. And we got overregulated, and I got out of it. And I'll never forget when I first bought commercial fertilizer, when I bought phosphorus and potassium, I could not believe how much it cost. But I think that's the big argument as far as sustainable farms is that, we do bring in commercial fertilizer.
See, and as a consumer, I never would have even thought about fertilizer. All I want to know is, can you sustain it if you didn't have, I suppose, if you didn't have access to to overarching human help. And I guess that the manure would play into that too. Which is exactly why I asked you if you were cut off from the world, could you produce your crops? And that to me is sustainability without destroying everything around it.
Well, yeah, because I would grab some sheep that are roaming around or some livestock that, yeah, unless it's, yeah, I don't know. It's a bad example because the zombies would eat the sheep and I don't know. I have to think about this.
How do you think, so as two hunters, how do you think that sustainability and conservation translates into agriculture? Because the first thing I brought up was the wild turkey in Wisconsin example.
Yeah, and I talk about this a lot because I'm also an outfitter, so I deal with 40 to 50 hunters a year that are, vast majority of them are from the city, and of course they have questions about that, and it's at times it's very frustrating because they will be against meat that is in the grocer's shelf because it had antibiotics, and the deer that they shoot is in their mind very natural and healthy compared to meat that's grown on a farm. So I've had that discussion a lot. Obviously I don't agree with them, but another one is especially when we had some global climate issues and the price of corn went up to $5, $6, $7, and they were making ethanol, and then with corn being that much, farmers were pulling ground out of CRP, which would be the Conservation Reserve Program, basically set-aside acres that are left for wildlife habitat. When corn got that high, farmers were pulling it out, and in doing so, they were also taking away hunting habitat, wildlife habitat. So that was probably the biggest discussion was, that's not right that they're taking this habitat away to grow crops. So I had that discussion a lot.
So what do you feel? What is your stance and how do you feel as an outfitter and a farmer in a scenario like that where you're feeding people at the expense of animals whose has no fault in the fact that humans are building condos and hotels and encroaching upon their habitat. So, and by necessity, so you guys had to go in and take that habitat away so that you could feed people. How do you feel about that as a farmer, as a hunter?
Well, yeah, there's two different opinions. I grew up on a farm, and I grew up in my dad's generation was there used to be a director of agriculture, Earl Butts, who was very famous for saying, we're going to farm fence row to fence row, which means take out everything, all the trees. Our goal is to feed the world, and we're going to do that by farming every square inch of it. That's changed, I will say, over the years. I mean, farming's changed a lot. They used the tillage practices that we used to do. We used to plow everything, so we'd actually turn the soil over, and it works fantastic, for growing crops. But when the rain comes, the wind comes, it washes the dirt away. Also, will wash away whatever fertilizer you have in there. So farmers have changed. We do different tillage practice to where now that ground doesn't wash away. I mean, it's very minimal that washes away if you're doing no-till or minimal till practices. As far as, the set-aside, the CRP acres, those are government programs that the consumers have told the leaders in Washington that, we want places where wildlife is set aside. So they work with the farmers. They pay the farmers to do that. And they usually do it in areas that are not very good farm ground, or also would, the ground would erode, wash away. So when corn went that high, yeah, it was too bad to see everybody pulling out. That's actually, I think it was a fault on farmers. I know it's our ground, but I think everybody should have realized that was going to be a pretty short run on the corn prices. So I will say on that part of it, the inner hunter of me was a little disappointed to see all those acres being pulled out.
That's good to hear, actually.
Well, don't tell anybody that I got a heart.
Well,
okay?
no, because there is this perception that farmers are all about the bottom dollar and that you guys make a gazillion dollars. And so it's good to hear stuff like that for just the average person to hear something like that.
Yeah. It's tough because it is a business.
Oh, yeah.
And we do have to make money.
I understand that. And I think most people understand that. But so let's talk a little bit about trends. What do you think are the top 2 trends that you've seen in your industry to sustain food growing practices? Maybe not even just food growing, but just agricultural and environmental practices, I guess.
The GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and we've talked about those in past episodes. I've seen that firsthand from a farmer that farmed before them and a farmer that is farming after them. I know the inputs that used to go into a crop as far as fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides. I know the trips that used to go into the trips across the field into raising a crop. Those have all dramatically been reduced with GMOs. And I know we've discussed in past episodes, the safety in that, but of course, I believe they're 100% safe. I think that's been the biggest game changer as far as saving the environment.
That's cool.
As far as the second one, I would say the variable rates and the precision and the technology. I guess that's all kind of three prongs of the same fork. We are so precise anymore. As far as like the spacing in between plants, we're precise on, we don't, like when you get to an end of the row or you overlap, technology allows us to shut each row off. So we're not overplanting, overlapping. We're putting fertilizer exactly where the plant is instead of, broadcasting it over the entire field. So as those technologies improve, that's only going to get better and better. And we're just going to be using less and less inputs.
That's true. Less waste, which would make any environmentalist happy.
Well, let me ask you this. What are 2 things that you're saying non-farmers do that are trying to help with the food problem?
I think the first one that really stands out, and maybe because I just saw that article about the Barge Farm that they launched in New York and that they're rolling out in a couple other larger cities as well. And I believe, so I also did a little more investigating on these, and they're actually talking about having these huge barges that they grow plants on. Some are going to be community gardens. Some are going to be rolled into a farmer's market style barge. And I think that's really, really, really cool. We, as podcasters, trying to bridge the divide between farmers and consumers, we're missing a ridiculously large segment of the population. And I think that farmers markets or agriculture and farms in general also miss a huge city-dwelling demographic. Just due to location. If you live in downtown New York, you're not going to drive an hour and a half to go to the damn farmers markets to pick up some onions. So these barge farms are going to be there. Everybody's going to have access to them if they want it. There are going to be sections that are geared towards low income, which I think is cool. And if nothing else, it just brings fresh produce kind of out of sight, out of mind. I'm always of that mentality. So if it's in your face, you might think about it a little more instead of making some macaroni and cheese. I also think that as cities expand, we do have to think outside of the box as far as growing things. And something like a food barge or a barge farm or whatever, or vertical farming, I think is really smart.
Yeah, I saw the article you posted about the barge farm, and I think it's novel. I think, like, as far as vegetables, I don't know. I don't know if you could grow them on a barge or not. But I think large scale to think about those actually feeding a large amount of people. I just can't wrap my head around it. There's just not enough. There's not enough space. There's not enough soil to do that. You talk about like how much wheat you need to make bread and that. And yeah, I think they're novel. Actually, I think you and I need to invest in one and maybe do like a restaurant off the.
No.
Isn't that Lake Milwaukee or something there? We can. I mean, it's really cool, but I think as far as an idea as for actually feeding large amounts of people, I don't think it's there, and it would definitely not be sustainable because you would have to bring everything in.
The other trend that I've seen is in the tourism industry, and that's sustainable learning vacations or like those eco hotels. There are vacation specialists that will offer up these trips where you can go down to whatever it is, like Panama or Honduras or whatever, and you can go and you can help farms and you can help learn about how other countries are struggling and little things that you can do to help them. But I definitely see that trend in the tourism industry for sure. People, even little things like, if you notice now, especially if they're a member of the Starwood, if they're owned by Starwood, which owns like, what is it? Now I'm drawing a blank on all the ones that they own. They own a bunch. Anyway, the point is that you see those plaques that are like, do you want to save water and not have them wash your towels every day or not do housekeeping one day? Which I, of course, always do. I'm like, well, whatever. I can use the same towel over and over at home. Why wouldn't I use the same towel over and over at this hotel and save some water? I don't know how much I'm actually saving, but it makes me feel better. So,
yeah, this is a big difference between you and me. Is that you're nice and that, and I just look at those plaques. I'm like, you cheap bastards! You're just trying to save money. So here, wash my towel.
Well, what about those like sustainable learning vacations? They're charging like $2,000-$3,000 for somebody to go down to freaking Nicaragua and work.
Well, I have been to Panama. I took ag tour down at Panama, and I think I've kind of seen what you're talking about on a very smaller scale. And I've actually been to like an aquaponics farm there, and it was very, very cool, very neat. But there again, I just don't see it really feeding a mass amount of people. I think they were talking about putting them on the rooftops, in abandoned buildings downtown, stuff like that. And again, it's all very neat. I just have that cynical view that it's feel-good projects. But when you really get down to it, if you're going to feed a lot of people with projects like this and like the barge stuff, I mean, you better get ready for paying like $100 a pizza because you're just not going to do it. It's not going to be economical.
Okay. I will buy that.
I like the idea. In fact, I'm a little seriously, if you could buy a barge and we could go and set up like a vegetable garden and put the restaurant in the middle and call it the Farmer and the City Girls Barge Restaurant Tours, I think we could be on to something.
I don't think you have any idea how cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs Milwaukeeans are for farm-to-table restaurants. I cannot explain to you the amount of field-to-fork and farm-to-table restaurants there are in Milwaukee. That would be very successful here.
Okay. I mean, do you have a barge? Well, think about this, Carrie. When the apocalypse hits, we could just set the barge because zombies can't swim, right? Or can they?
Depends on which movie you're watching. Resident Evil, we're screwed.
Oh man, yeah, we better just keep that barge going out to the ocean.
That's funny.
So if there was a barge on Lake Milwaukee and they're raising vegetables and every Saturday morning they docked and they sold them, was that something you would do?
Like go buy it there?
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a cool idea, and it's neat. I like it because it shows people that their food comes from somewhere besides Walmart.
Exactly. And so say take like the Milwaukee River runs through several different segments of Milwaukee. If that barge could stop as it went, you would bring a lot of awareness to people in the inner city or in the suburbs who don't care or might not care, but might be interested if they saw something so novel. I mean, you could park it down by McKinley Park and all the people who go to the beach would be like, oh, hey, let's get some whatever for lunch. I don't know. It's interesting.
There's probably some permits involved.
There might be.
Yeah. I'll get the barge, you get the permits.
Wait, how come I get the
We'll do this
hard part?
Yeah, because you go into the permit office. Who are they going to work with better, you or me? We could put like an outboard motor on this thing. Oh man, I'm loving this idea.
So do you not feel that ecotourism has any part to play in sustainable agriculture or farming in general?
Listen, anytime someone is introduced into how their food is made, I'm for. Even if I don't agree with it. And, you know, if I'm going to, in my inner mind, I'm thinking these barge things are hippy-dippy, feel-good stuff. I love the fact that maybe someone is going to go there and realize, hey, you know, my tomato actually grows on a plant and it doesn't just magically show up at Walmart. That part I very much like. So as cynical and mean as I am, I'm not going to bash these things because I think if we're smart, we could also utilize them as farmers.
Good deal.
Well, yeah, this is cool. I'm ready for the apocalypse now, and I've got my barge idea. That's a new venture.
Awesome.
Farmer and City Girl barge coming to a waterway near you.
That'd be awesome.
This is, wouldn't it? It'd be totally
we could
awesome.
just podcast from here.
Well, yeah. Oh my gosh! You think about this, man. The possibilities are limitless.
We're educating the world.
Yeah. So, Carrie, what type of things do you want people to talk to us about on leaving us comments and also on the old social media there?
I don't know. I guess maybe I would like to hear from farmers and consumers. I'd like to hear from farmers why the term sustainable agriculture really sticks in your craw. Like, I'd really like to know if it's just general overview or if it's something that, you know, were you attacked by a bunch of environmentalists or something? I would truly like to know that.
Yes. And timing is everything. And I know podcasts are not timely, but when we started talking about this topic, and you got just a little taste of sometimes what's the quote-unquote average farmer gets from someone that is organic or sustainable. You kind of get attacked on Twitter a little bit there just for asking a question.
Literally, just for asking a question to clarify what picture he had showed me. I'm like,
yes, and it was
that's okay.
It was a lot of organic farmers also messaged us and said, hey, this guy does not represent all organic farmers, just like our introduction to the podcast.
And that's why I'm wondering if that's why because as soon as I said sustainable agriculture, I could like hear you rolling your eyes.
You can't hear that.
Hear it in the tone of your voice. You're like, whatever. What are you talking about? Big sigh.
It was an internal sigh. I swear to you. It is. Well, you get sensitive to it because it's all right. You know, I am sustainable. We've been doing this forever. We're getting better at it. But yeah. So yeah, we are sensitive. And I'm going to say, I'm not going to add anything because I would imagine your question is going to get enough feedback.
Yeah, I would definitely just like to know why farmers have such an aversion to the words sustainable agriculture and if it's from personal experiences. That's it. Where can they find you, Rob?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. You just search Shark Farmer. You can also go to the website, sharkfarmer.com, where you can listen to my currently poorly rated podcasts, thanks to Ag Media, but that's okay. Where can people find you, Carrie?
You can find me anywhere. Just search for Carrie Zylka, CarrieZylka, on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, everywhere. You can go to thefarmerandthecitygirl.com and you can learn more about us if you'd like to. We both have separate pages there, and you can also find our social media channels on that page.
And you can also find us on the Farm and Rural Ag Network, not your dad's Ag Radio. Yo.
Did you really just say yo? Oh my God, and you're editing, so I can't edit it out.
Carrie hates when I say yo, and can you tell everybody the title of today's recording?
Trends in Sustainable Agriculture.
No. The title I gave it on Zencaster.
Oh, I gotta look. Wait. Shut up. You did not. Oh my God, dude. You better not title this Sustainable Yo. Oh, shit.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to the Sustainable Yo podcast.
I'm out.